Hello, hello. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to our JupyterHub deployment, Season 1, Episode number 6. And I'm glad that you're here. So before we get started with everything about the stream, I just want to quick tell you a little bit about me. So I'm Peter, and during the day I work teaching engineering, but I'm also a coder and a blogger and an author. So here's my blog, Python for Undergraduate Engineers. This post is about using matplotlib, a Python plotting library, to demonstrate piston motion, and I blog about all different ways that undergraduate engineers can use Python to solve engineering problems. My book, Problem Solving with Python 3.7 Edition, A Beginner's Guide to Python and Open Source Programming Tools, is available on Amazon, so you can pick it up there if you want to support this work. So the GitHub repo for this stream can be found here on my GitHub, Stream 2020. And today we are in Season 1, Episode number 6. You can go to the same GitHub repo, and then any of the files that we create during the stream today, they will be shared here. One last thing before we get going is about our code of conduct. So on the stream we've got a code of conduct both for me and any commenters, and just be friendly, patient, welcoming, considerate, respectful. Be careful of the words that you choose, and I'll be careful of the words that I choose. I want to make sure that this stream is appropriate for all different ages. Moderate your expectations. I'm doing this on my free time. I don't do this professionally. And I'll try to do my best to answer any questions that are in the chat. And when we disagree, try to understand why and know that a simple apology can go a long way. So in this stream, we've been working on a JupyterHub deployment. These are the JupyterHub docs if you want to learn more about JupyterHub. JupyterHub is a way of running Jupyter notebooks in the cloud and will allow users to log into JupyterHub just using a web browser and be able to write and run Python code as well as other types of programming language code with no installation locally. So if you've got other questions about JupyterHub, you can see the JupyterHub documentation here on this page. The docs that we're going to be following today can be found here, and we're going to be going through the Google Authentication step. Now last week I was trying to complete this step and we ran into some problems, so we've got to do some troubleshooting, and I was able to fix those problems off the stream, so I want to show you what I did. Alright, so let's go to Linode where our JupyterHub server is hosted, and let's turn on our server. Right now our server is offline. Here at the Linode dashboard, I'll just click the power on button and confirm that I want to power on our server. So we'll give that a minute or so. Alright, so our server's all booted up. So let's open up Putty, and then we'll log into the server, update the packages on the server. And the other thing I want to do is run this little command just to make the prompt look a little bit easier to see on stream. So I'm going to go here to the Windows Start menu and type Putty. Putty is an application which you can use on Windows to communicate with servers over SSH. And I've already got a configuration for our JupyterHub server, so I'll load that up. The important things is that you've got the server IP address, and then down here in SSH and auth, you've got the SSH key, which is stored on your computer. You can create that with Putty, and then also make sure that you've got the correct username. You could use root if you want to log in as root, but we created a non-root sudo user, so we're logging in with that user. Alright, looks like our server booted, and it looks like we're logged in. So let's type clear, and now we'll type the update command. So that's sudo apt get ey update and sudo apt get ey upgrade. Type in our password. So I haven't ran the server for about a week, so it'll just take a little bit to do this update. And it's a good idea when you're logging on, making changes to the server, to do one of these updates. Our updates have finished, so I'll type clear. And now I'm going to type in that special command to change the prompt. So I'm going here locally to the local version of the repo for the stream. And here in Season 1, Episode 6, in the contents, I'm going to copy this little command. The PS1 variable is the variable that shows what your command prompt should look like. And then I'll go back here to the server. I'll use the right mouse button to paste, and then click enter. And now you see it says Peter at JupyterHub server. This tilde means we're in the home directory, and then we've got this open line that we can type commands in. Alright, so let's talk about what we did last time and then see how we're going to get going with what we're doing this time. So what we did last time was we configured Github Authentication so that we could log into our JupyterHub server with GitHub usernames and passwords. And today we're going to be working on using Google Authentication and logging into our server with Google usernames and passwords. So in order to do this, we've got to go to the Google Developer Console, and we've got to get our Google OAuth credentials in JSON format. So I'm going to open up a web browser and then go to the Google Developer Console. If you just type into Google Developer Console, it'll bring you here, or you can use console.developers.google.com. So here we are in the Google Developer Console, and then under credentials, this is where the JSON that is we can use to authenticate with Google. So here is the JSON for the stream, and you can click the download button and download that JSON locally. Note that you also need to do a domain verification first, before you are able to get the OAuth credentials, and you do that by clicking Add Domain. And I've already got the credential or the domain that we're using for our JupyterHub server added. So once you have those credentials, then you can download the JSON of those credentials. So I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code, and then we'll take a look at an example of what these credentials could look like. So when you download this from Google, this is sort of what it looks like. You get this JSON which has this web key, and then that web key has this client ID key, and then this long string that's the client ID, and then it also has the client secret, and then there's this long string for the client secret. It'll also have a redirect URIs, and that will be based on your domain. So here it says mydomain.org. Ours is going to be engr101lab.org. So this is what this looks like. So we need to move these credentials over to the JupyterHub server. So we're going to move this over with an FTP package called Filezilla. Filezilla is a program that you can use to Filezilla, not Zilla, Filezilla, that you can use to move files over to servers over SSH. And no, I don't want a new version. So I've already got our servers set up here. So if I go to Site Manager and see our Stream 2020 saved configuration, and the important things are that you have the IP address of the host, you select SFTP, that you select the login key file type, and I found I've got to use root for some of the places that I'm dragging these files over to. You can use your non-root sudo user's username, but then if there's a directory which that user doesn't have permissions to, then you won't be able to dump the file in that directory. And then you've got to specify the key file that you created with Putty earlier. So I'll hit connect. On the left-hand side, this is our local computer. So this is the local version. So if I click Season 1, Episode 6, is contents.md. That's what we were looking at to use today. So the GitHub credentials, the Google credentials actually saved last week. So they're here in the Season 1, Episode 5 folder on the GitHub repo. On the right-hand side, this is the directory structure for our server. So we've been saving our configuration files in etc/JupyterHub. So let's move to etc/JupyterHub. It says no type directory. There we go. It didn't like the space. So I'll take this Google OAuth credentials.json file, and then we'll drag it over here. And it's going to make like a ding sound when it goes in. Okay, so now that we drag that file over, we should be able to see it on the server and see these other files too. I've got this college ID JSON file as well. So back here in the server, if I do cd to /etc/JupyterHub, and then do ls to list the contents of the directory, I can see the Google OAuth credentials.json file, that I just moved over. Okay, so now that we got our credentials in there, what we need to do is we need to modify our JupyterHub config.py file to specify the Google usernames and passwords, and using Google OAuth rather than Github OAuth. Let's go back to Visual Studio Code here and take a look at that set of configuration. So here's the configuration file that we're going to move over, and we'll just go over some of the lines on this real quick. So we've got to import Python's JSON module because we're going to read our secrets out of that JSON file. And then from the OAuthenticator package, we had to install that on the server using Conda from the Conda Forge channel. We import this local Google Authenticator class. Then we set C as our config instance or config object, and then we set some attributes like the logging level, the spawner command, and here are our files for security, the cookie secret and the proxy auth token. Then we specify the authenticator class to be the local Google Authenticator class, and that's the class that we imported above. And then this next set of lines, this pulls out the credentials from the JSON file and then applies it to the appropriate attributes. So out of that JSON file, we set the client ID, we set the client secret, we set the OAuth callback URL, and we set the create system users equals true. Now note here that for the callback URL, we have to pull the 0th value out of the list because that's stored in a list format. And then there's this it's a little tricky line here, and when I did my first JupyterHub installation, this is something that I worked real hard on getting to work, and that is a lot of usernames from Google contain dots in them, like first name dot last name, or special characters in them that aren't allowed in regular Linux usernames. So this little line allows you to create Linux usernames that aren't the standard allowed characters. So we'll be allowed to have dots, for instance, in the usernames. Then this part here, we've got this JSON file which contains our college ID information, and it's got the college domain like yourcollege.edu, and then this college ID name, and you can just set that to whatever your college name is. You could also do your company name. Note that the hosted domain does not have to be at gmail.com. It could be another ending for the username's emails that is hooked up with Google, like our college usernames or your emails. So if you can log into Gmail or Google Apps with your email address, then this should work. Now the problem I had last week was this. So I thought that this bracket was a typo, and then I took this bracket out too, and I'll save it, and then we'll go back to Filezilla and drag it over with those two brackets taken out like I had last week. So I'm here in Season 1, Episode 6. Let's make sure we're saved here. Yep, We're saved, and we'll go back, and then I'll drag the JupyterHub config.py file over. It'll give us the ding. So let's now go to the server and see if we can start JupyterHub. So I'm back on the server, type clear. So let's make sure Nginx is running. We're using Nginx as a reverse proxy in front of JupyterHub. So type sudo systemctl status Nginx. It says Nginx is active and running. We'll type Control-C to get out of that status. And then next we'll try sudo systemctl start JupyterHub. And then if we type sudo systemctl status JupyterHub, we get this. So it says that JupyterHub failed, and it was really confusing to figure out why. So it says it's got this traitlet.traitlet error, and that the authentication wasn't working. So I dug around for a while, and let's see if we can find this on GitHub. So something like traitlet.traitlet Google Authenticator. And what I was able to find was the OAuthenticator actual source code. Let's see if we can find that real quick here. So GitHub OAuthenticator. And then here in OAuthenticator, they've got a couple different authenticators, and one of these is Google. And then here we've got this hosted domain. That's where the problem is. And if you look here, it takes a list, and then it says help list of the domains, for example mycollege.edu. So the problem with our current config is that we don't have a list of domains, we just have the domain as a string. So if we include an extra set of brackets here so that our domain is now in a list of domains rather than just one domain. Oops, I put this on the wrong line. And I've even got a comment here for myself in the configuration file to remind me to do it. There we go. Let's do a save. So we've got now a list of domains, even though there's only one item in the list. And then we will move this file over using Filezilla. Alright, Filezilla, we've got the file saved and made sure that we had a list of those domains. So let's drag that over to our JupyterHub server. Ring me the bell. Alright, let's go back to the server. And I can't see too well in this window. Let's make it a little bit smaller. just a little bit smaller. Okay, Control C to cancel. Now we'll try sudo system ctl start JupyterHub. Now fingers crossed here that this is going to work. Sudo system ctl status JupyterHub. Sweet! Thumbs up in the webcam. It is running. So looks like it's working. Let's type Control C to get out of that status dashboard. Now I'll type clear. And now let's bring up a web browser, go to our domain, and see if we can log in with Google usernames and passwords. So here in web browser, I'll type our domain. We've hooked up to JupyterHub. So now it says sign in with the college. And then it asks me which email address. And then it asks me to log in. So I'm going to switch off of the webcam screen, go to private here. So I'm typing in my username and I'm typing in my password. And then I'm clicking the sign in button. And now I'm logged into JupyterHub. Amazing. So let's start a new Jupyter notebook, a new Python 3 notebook, and let's type in some Python code. Let's do a simple print statement. So print, we can now log in with Google usernames and passwords. Cool. Yay! Alright. So if I go to my, actually let's save this. So we'll save this as the Google login notebook. Make sure I save. Then I'll go back to my control panel and I will stop my server and then I will log out. Now note that I've got the admin screen here. Let's see why that is in just a sec. So I've got the admin screen because here in our configuration I set myself here as an admin user, and that's why I had that admin tab available to me when I was running JupyterHub. So let's go back to the server and let's cd into the /home directory. And now if we list, we can see that we've got this new user. This was the Google user. So if we cd into that, and then we do an ls, we can see the notebook that we made. About if we go back and then we cd into there and then do ls. Oh, interesting. Interesting. So it did create a home directory, but it was actually saving stuff in this directory. Very interesting. Okay. But to the Jupyter user, it's totally transparent. This was our GitHub user there. Awesome. So that brings us to kind of the halfway point for the stream. So I'm going to take a little drink of water, do a little bit of stretch. All right. So in a way, our JupyterHub installation is up and going. And you could stop right here and say, now people can log in, now people can use the server. But one little extra bit I want to try to do is run the call idle server script, and do that so that if users forget to shut down their servers and log out, that automatically their servers will get shut down after a length of time. Now we don't want to shut users' servers down who are actively using JupyterHub, but if they haven't typed a command or run anything, then if we shut the server down, that saves computer resources for the other users. So I'm going to go to the docs that we've been following. And where are my docs? Here they are. I'll scroll down here, and to optionals extra, let's look for the call idle server script. Maybe it's not in optional extras. Here it is. Call idle servers. So let's read from the docs that I built here. How do we do this? So if too many students or users forget to log out, then this will shut their server down and save computational resources. So in the JupyterHub docs, it sets an active server configuration limit. So I set the concurrent spawn limit and then active server limit. Let's make sure that both of those two things is set in our config. So we want to look for active server limit, concurrent spawn limit. So we've got active server limit set to 26 users at a time, and then concurrent spawn limit, we've got that set to 13 users can log in simultaneously. We've also got this proxy cleanup as true, and then cleanup servers as true. Okay, so we've got to move the script and run it as a JupyterHub service, and it looks like that we've got to add this stuff to our JupyterHub config. So at the top, we'll do import sys, that at the top, along with our import Json. And then we'll copy this. We'll put this down near the bottom of our configuration file. Control V. So this is going to run this executable file that we store in JupyterHub called idleservers.py, and it'll run it with a timeout, and then it calls this hub API. So let's go back to the docs. And it says make sure that dateutil is installed in the JupyterHub virtual env and try to import dateutil. Alright, let's make sure that dateutil is installed, like those docs say. So I'll run conda activate JupyterHub. It says that is, alright, conda, oh, it's JupyterHub env, that's why. Conda activate Jupyter, JUP, what, JupyterHub env. And then we want to see if we can run Python, and then see if we can import dateutil and call dateutil.version. That worked. Dateutil.version. Double underscore version. This double underscore attribute is common to a lot of Python packages. It'll tell you what version it is if you do dot double underscore version double underscore. So it looks like that's installed. So click exit. And now we need to get that call idle servers script. So I'll click on the link. And here is the call idle server script, and that's where I got what we had to include. So I'm going to copy all of this, from GitHub. Alright, and do copy. Go back locally to Visual Studio Code. Make sure that we are in the directory, and then we'll add a file, and we'll call this call idle servers.py. Let me go back to the docs and just make sure I spelled that correctly. Call idle servers.py. Back here. Rename. Great. So, whoops. I copied the name. Now I've got to go back and copy the code in the file. Let's try this one more time. Select the whole file out of GitHub. Big thanks to the JupyterHub maintainers for putting all this together. We'll do copy. Go back to our call idle servers script. Control V for paste, and then save. back to our JupyterHub config, make sure that we've got that set. Looks good. And now we'll go to Filezilla and drag the files over. So I've got to do a refresh here, so if I double click this, there it is, OAuth servers. So let's drag over our JupyterHub config.py file, ring it, and let's drag over our OAuth servers file, ring it. Great. So we'll restart JupyterHub and see if we've got any errors. Deactivate. Alright. So system ctl stop JupyterHub sudo see if it lets me do that. Failed to shop, access denied, because I need sudo. Sudo system ctl stop JupyterHub. And now sudo system ctl start JupyterHub. And fingers crossed, when we do the status, everything's okay. Sudo system ctl status JupyterHub. Active and running. Let's go back to the web browser and see if we can still log in successfully. I'll click refresh here. And then I'll click sign in, but while I do this, I'll put the private screen up again. So I'm clicking sign in, I'm selecting the account that I logged in with earlier, put in my username and my password, and now I'm logged into JupyterHub. Let's see if we create a new notebook. Run a little Python code, make sure that works. Let's build a plot this time. So let's import numpy as np, import matplotlib.py, plot as plt, and then we'll run matplotlib inline. Hopefully all the imports work. That worked. Let's do just a simple plot, do cosine curve. How about x is equal to np.a range, go from 0 up to 10, count by 0.1, y is equal to np dot cosine of x, and a plt dot plot x comma y, and a plt dot show. So let's see that cosine plot. Great. Looks like our server's working. So now, if our call idle server script is working correctly, if we don't click stop my server, or we left that Jupyter notebook open for a very long time, JupyterHub will shut the server down for us. As long as I save the notebook, then no work gets lost. And actually, Jupyter notebooks autosave every once in a while. So even if you were working on something and then left and forgot to save, it would still probably save what your work was. And hopefully this will decrease the load on the server for the other users if that user isn't actually using JupyterHub. They just forgot to stop their server and they just forgot to log out. So I'll click log out. All right. So that was really all we wanted to accomplish today in the stream. We moved over that call idle server script and then added that extra bit of configuration to the JupyterHub config file. And the modified JupyterHub config file will get saved here in the GitHub repo. So all that's left now is to shut down JupyterHub, shut down Nginx, then shut down the server. We'll also shut down the server from the Linode dashboard, and then we'll save all these files locally, commit it to Git, and push it up to GitHub. And that will finish out our stream for today. So let's go back to the server. We'll press Control-C to get out of the status dashboard. And first we'll stop JupyterHub. So sudo systemctl stop JupyterHub. And now if I go to the website and I try to log in, it'll say bad gateway. Looks like Nginx is still running, but JupyterHub is not running. So if we do sudo systemctl stop Nginx, that'll stop the Nginx reverse proxy server. Now if we try to refresh, it says that the site can't even be reached this time because we stopped Nginx. And then we'll type sudo shutdown -h now. And this will shut down the server and our Putty window will disconnect. If we go back to Filezilla, it also says that the server unexpectedly closed, so we can't use Filezilla anymore because we stopped the server. So last I'll go to the Linode dashboard here, and it says that it's running, but I'm going to select power off. Until next week. Obviously, if you're running JupyterHub in production, you don't want to do these shutdown steps, but in between the stream each week, I'm shutting the server down just for security and so that I don't have to worry about it. So let's go back here to VS Code, make sure our contents are saved, make sure that our config is saved, make sure that call idle server script is saved. Great. So now I'll open the Anaconda prompt locally. So this isn't the server, this is on my local machine. And I will type in the commands to add, commit, and push this up to GitHub. So we'll type git add dot to add all the files, then git commit -m, and then our message, and season 01, episode 06, stream, and then we'll type git push origin master. Great. So thank you so much for participating with the stream. I hope you learned something about JupyterHub and now are able to use Google usernames and passwords to log into JupyterHub and be able to automatically have users' servers shut down if they don't use them for a long amount of time. So I really appreciate anybody who's participated, and I'll see you again next week. Thank you.